Yeah. Good morning, sir. Our guest has arrived.
No, it's that why is it a hazard?
A hazard.
You know, there's an intolerance that Africans in leadership have towards anything that is contrary to what they themselves believe to be the truth. And the people who are foolhardy enough to say what they think in the open tend to be young people. So yes. So when you are vocal as a young person, depending on who it is you are directing your conversation to, that conversation can actually constitute a health hazard. Yes.
Wow. I have a slightly
Skew.
nuance, and just new. You know, there is a, shall I say, a tradition, and this is the difference between critique and criticizing. Critique disagrees with a viewpoint and provides perhaps a better or alternative viewpoint. A critic might simply say, hiyo sio mzuri.
Actually, they put it better. They say, "Hiyo ni bure."
Hiyo ni bure.
Yes.
So I think that in the African context, that's where the issue is.
Yeah.
That very often, and it is so easy to say hiyo ni bure. It is so easy to criticize, but much harder to actually conceive of something and promote that idea. So I think what perhaps older people react to is that it's okay to disagree, but perhaps offer an alternative. It's not sufficient to simply say hiyo ni bure.
Actually, when you're criticizing, it is like what Mheshimiwa is saying. It's actually good to always provide an alternative.
But Excellency, people need to be. This is something you have to teach.
Yes.
Because when you use the word tradition, tradition in an African setting placed a young person in a position where their primary purpose was to listen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You contribute, yes.
But you listen first.
But on cue also. Meaning,
Usiongee wazee wakiongea.
tafadhali.
Well, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
A very good morning to you. In studio, we do have Honorable Ndiritu Muriithi. He is an economist and he is the chairman, Kenya Revenue Authority. The conversation today is about attaining a first world economic status, and if that indeed is the Kenyan pathway. We have actually had that conversation, Mheshimiwa, here I think it was the first hour, about the pathway that Kenya is taking towards being a better economy than it is today. One of the things that has come up is the issue to do with education, for instance. We're witnessing a couple of problems as far as CBE is concerned. We're just learning about grade 10 learners, who are unable to go to school. Others do not have the fees, and so on and so forth. Do you think that we are on the right path as far as that is concerned, or these are just teething problems that in a foreseeable future will be taken care of?
Allow me to start by saying that if you look at all countries that have made the transformation to high income status, so-called first world, and perhaps CT will help us with definitions, because so that we are talking about the same thing. But all countries that have attained high income status have invested very heavily in education.
Yes.
Because in the end, growing the economy is about productivity, and generally, the more education people have, the more likely for them to be productive.
Right.
So if you look at, say, things like literacy, all countries that have been able to achieve high income status are those ones that have achieved generally about 100% literacy. Then you can go deeper and say which kind of literacy. So it's not just about reading and writing.
Yes.
Then you'll find that all those economies are economies that have been able to above 70% transition to tertiary education. Again, it's about productivity at the personal level and the role of education in doing that. So although Kenya is not yet there, in my view, and by the way, every 5 to 10 years, we are always trying to rethink education.
Okay.
Firstly, can we get it to everybody? And then secondly, of what nature is it? Is it appropriate, and so on and so on?
Yes.
And this question of the CBC or competency-based
education,
it's about what do you really teach people or young people, and does it give them the necessary skill set or competency to be able to be productive?
Okay.
And I think we it is work in progress, but certainly Kenya has done better than most countries in thinking through education.
Right.
I would say the latest efforts probably go back 15 years ago, or slightly longer, maybe 20 years ago, when free primary
education
came about.
President Kibaki.
President Kibaki time. That brings in a very large portion of basically children who are not making it to school at all.
Yeah.
Then you see a general push, therefore, to expand, where people are arguing about what is stopping. At that time, it was class 7.
Yes.
What is blocking the transition between primary and secondary school?
Yeah.
And in those days, there were all kinds of things, including fees, as you've mentioned. And you see efforts by government at that time. Now we are transitioning to Uhuru government to remove the fees that people used to pay for exams and things like that, and whatever, in some effort to see how do you actually afford secondary education.
Yeah.
Again, going back 20 years ago, you see a push to expand university education. And basically where we are roughly is that every county should have a university. And every constituency should have a technical training institute.
Okay.
And basically every ward should have a vocational training center. And we are, again, I would say 70-80% there. Not all counties have universities.
Okay.
But by far the majority have. You may have 2, 3, maybe 5 counties that don't yet have a university in them. Some counties, of course, have several universities. And I would say something like 120 out of the 290 constituencies have a technical training institute. And by the way, of those technical training institutes, you'll find about 30 where you can find the most sophisticated machining tools. Kind of world-class machining tools. Now, machining tools are computerized lathe machines, so that you can cut precision pieces. When you make if you make a machine, that particularly that is moving, it has to be very precise. And quite a number, by my last count, and that was a few years ago, 30 of them had those kinds of tools. So, work in progress. 70-80% there.
Well, there's something our previous guest, Dan Okwiri, former manager with KQ, has said, because I asked him that same issue of education, and he was like, the system that we had, which is 844, is more or less something similar to what was introduced by our colonial masters back in the day. And it has just, even if it changed, it just changed a little bit, because I know someone like CT has been telling me the way he did. Was it CPE? Or even a previous one?
I actually am a classroom teacher.
Yes.
I'm an educator who taught in that old system as well as the 844 system.
Right. Yes, and so what I got from Dan is he was saying that system wasn't necessarily broken, so we didn't need to fix it. He was for the idea, even if something needs to be changed, because obviously things change with time, just tweak it a little bit, but still maintain it as the 844 that it was. And it got me thinking, because worldwide they are using a similar system, and now we're even the professionals that are graduating or will graduate from this current system might not fit globally in the career spaces. I don't know what you think about that.
Paul, that 844 system in its original format had very many components that you now find in CBC.
Right.
But all these changes often require a certain degree of funding. Our education funding is fantastic. The question has always been, does all the funding that is allocated to education end up where it should end up? Because it's a lot of money that we put aside for education. Believe me, it is a lot of money. And I am doubtful as to whether it goes where it should go. That is my personal view.
And, well, okay. I grew up at the time when it was CPE.
Right.
In primary school.
Okay.
And the debate at that time was whether really we were giving young learners the correct foundation. Because, people argue in the, let me use big English, pedagogy of
It's a good word.
pedagogy of education.
Right.
That, okay, numeracy, language skills. And then you have to, maybe you can even think about science type skills. And the real question always is, are we laying that particular foundation?
Okay.
Now, people would ask questions, certainly me when I went to secondary school.
Right.
People would ask questions like, a Form 2 student at that time, or even a Form 4 student, what can they make something?
Okay.
Can you make something?
Yeah.
And you will recall, I don't know, or I want to, not that you will recall, but what I want to say is that if in those days, for example, secondary schools would have workshops, where young, people would go to learn certain skills, particularly to be able to make things.
So things like metalwork,
carpentry, woodwork, and so on. And all of that is an idea of, are we laying the right foundation? So my own personal take is that I accept education must continuously change to be in tune with the times. In my day with CT, computers were mainframes.
Entire buildings.
Yeah, and there was even only, I think, one at the University of Nairobi.
Yeah.
And the programming was COBOL. It's completely unimaginable, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But today, the computer is in the phone.
Imagine that.
This phone has more computing power, probably, than the mainframe that was at the University of Nairobi.
Actually, it does.
Yeah. So, education does have to evolve. To me, it's a good thing that we continuously debate education and check that it is relevant for the time, and perhaps even more futuristic.
Right.
That the person who is going, say, to grade 10 today, by the time they are going into the workplace, what skill set can we imagine them to have?
And you've actually gone where I was going, because it is with our education system that we can ensure that we can secure our economic future.
Correct.
Because these students, we say that, they are the future of any country. So they're the same people who are going to get into their professional careers and help bring money into the economy by either innovation, working, and so on and so forth.
Still, some foundational knowledge, like, say, engineering.
Yes.
You can say, well, what kind of engineering will the person in grade 10 do? Still, some fundamental things of physics, of engineering, will remain the same. E equals MC squared doesn't change.
It will never change.
But how you apply it is what is changing, and that, in my view, is what. So we want. We no longer expect you to use a slide rule. I know young people will ask CT and I, what are you all these talking about? A slide rule was what you used to understand cosines and things like that. It was before calculators. You used a slide rule.
Right.
Today, we don't even really quite expect you to use a handheld calculator. You use your phone, or it is on your
computer.
Right. Nonetheless, the foundation, of calculus, for example.
Yes.
Those things do not change. It is the way they are applied that changes. So if you ask me, and I'm not an educator,
Yes.
I'm an observer, I would say that you need to ensure always that the foundation is there. So although we don't expect you to use a slide rule, those rules that are contained in that thing called a slide rule,
Yes.
which are the rules of physics,
Right.
and the rules of algebra, the rules of calculus, they will always be there. I would hope we lay that foundation,
Yeah.
and then we apply it to the modern and then futuristic world.
Okay. Yeah. Because when I look at some of these countries that we would like to be like, the Asian tigers, and even some of the part of the Western world, when I look at the education system, I feel like it's on point. We're talking about countries like Japan, we're talking about China, we're talking about places like Germany, the way they do their things, and they've obviously fine-tuned them. And if you look at even Germany, they've fine-tuned it over a period of time, so they have that advantage over us.
Indeed, but Germany, for example, was very much an 844 kind of
System.
In fact, 844 came out of a commission called McKay Commission that had been set up by
Yes, it
President
was the
Moi.
McKay Commission.
And they looked at Germany, they looked at Canada, and so on. And that's how we went to 844.
Okay.
Again, going back to this question of criticizing and critique, there was some connected thinking even back then.
Okay.
It didn't work, but it was there. The leadership at that time is saying, can we industrialize? Okay? And they say we are going to industrialize.
Yeah.
So how can we tweak education so that we industrialize? And then they say, well, what practical steps can we do? That is how the numerical machining complex, which is a really big manufacturing, heavy engineering workshop just around the corner here at the railways, was born. And the attempt to make a car, again, it didn't succeed. 1 or 2 units were made. It was called Nyayo Pioneer, but we were not able to transition into proper heavy manufacturing. Those machines that were bought, and were bought in 1989, 1990, that's a long time ago. By the way, the story goes that the CIA objected to why President Moi was buying those machines, because they are so President. You can make anything.
Actually,
machines.
that was the point.
Yeah.
It went beyond the manufacturing of vehicles.
Yes.
What you could do with that equipment, and Malaysia, who began their process of the so-called their own car. It's called a Proton.
Yes.
They manufacture them to date. You even see some of them on the Kenyan road. So what was started was possible.
It was possible. And you see, we are still having that debate today.
Yeah.
If you look at the arguments we are having, there are those who say it is not possible for us to become first world. And for me, I said perhaps City will tell us the definitions. But me, I think when I'm saying Singapore, or or first world, what I mean is per capita income of $14,000 and above. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Because some people are taking this argument very literally, as though we will paint the whole place and make the same buildings and it will look exactly like Singapore. Come on, guys, it's not like that. It's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's a way of example. So me, when I'm saying Singapore, what I'm saying is high income.
All right.
But the reason why I always use you as an example is because when you do this work we do, you tend to study very many things. One of them is we study our counties and the leadership that counties have and the plan. The future we speak of is actually embedded in the education system that we have created to take us there. So that it's a build-up from the time somebody is in probably ECD, primary. You have understood that this is what we'd like to see, and we are building these Kenyans to be able to fit into this thing that we have seen. And you keep improving on it because as you realize the changes that may come about. But there is the fundamental understanding of what needs to be done to be able to get people to understand that they can change. Number one, their livelihoods can change, their economic well-being can change, and that they can be different just at the level of where they're at, because once they see that initial change, everything else that seems futuristic is a lot easier to understand.
Absolutely.
Because they've seen, and education does it. Our history is replete with it. People went to school in the colonial era. How did we understand the education was good? The person came and built their parents' house with a corrugated iron sheet. That is a big thing. If you gave them time, they bought a bicycle. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
Some bought a motorbike. It was a really big thing. With time, somebody bought a car. Now you realize.
It was a really.
Yes. Now this education is not a bad thing. You could see the changes. In this day and age, the principle hasn't changed really. So how do you start it? The national talk is the national talk. I get that one, but the county system was created so that we take this thing we refer to as development,
Right.
And we take it to where we live.
right down. So an infrastructure
Yeah.
had to be created to get people to understand that, forget this national government discussion, right here, where we are. These things that we do, how do we translate this so that it actually becomes productive and becomes profitable for you, so that your life changes exactly where you don't have to move to go somewhere else. You are exactly where you are. Every county provides that opportunity because every county is unique, and it has properties, and it has capacities that are unique to itself, and these capacities can be enhanced so that it benefits them and the people in other counties who don't have them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mheshimiwa, we sat here with the deputy governor for Mandera County last week, and there's something he pointed out, and it kind of saddened me and got me confused at the same time. So this is what he told us, the DG. He said that a lot of the monies that come to counties, number one, a very huge chunk of it, and I think he mentioned something with 60%. I could be wrong on that, but I know he mentioned above 50%. Yeah, will go to salaries, and then he said another amount will now go to recurrent expenditures and so on and so forth. So he said the other amount that remains is very little for development and other kinds of projects.
Pause there.
Yes.
Let's peel the onion. What is development?
Right.
What does it mean? Is it a physical road? Is it a bridge? Or is it what the citizen does with that road or bridge? So we circle back to what City is saying.
Yes.
This thing starts with our imagination. If we can imagine it, if we can believe it, if we can conceptualize it.
Yes.
Now, I don't know whether, let me try this example. I hope it will work.
Okay.
When the Kibaki administration built Thika Road, in fact, after a while, Kibaki called for a meeting because so many people had died on that, like 300 people crossing the road.
Yep.
And you see now, if the president was getting vexed that, okay, this road, we were not building it so that people can die.
Sure.
I mean, what is going on? If you recall, afterwards, then governor of Nairobi, there was some effort, I think, and he put bumps on. Then it becomes even more confusing. Why build a highway and then put bumps?
Yes.
But of course, the real issue is citizens are trying to cross this highway. It is now 10 lanes. I mean, how do you cross
from one end there?
So the solution is to build
a bridge
for people to walk. Now, persuading people to use the bridge
is another issue.
So even today, the bridges are there, but you still see occasionally people trying to cross, forcing the highway people to try and create physical barriers to dissuade you from trying to dash across.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, if we can imagine it, conceptualize it, believe it, it can happen.
Okay.
And the debate in Kenya today, in my view, is that there are, unfortunately, a number of political leaders who, instead of helping us conceptualize, believe in ourselves, their daily job is to tell us it's not possible.
Yes.
I mean, where is that leadership? Look, you may not agree, and you don't have to agree with what, say, I say, or what another person is saying, or what the president is saying, but surely you owe it to Kenya and to future generations to be positive about Kenya.
Yes.
And to help Kenya imagine a better future.
Right.
I circle back to this issue of the Technical Training Institute, I tell you, a few years ago, when I was governor of Laikipia, I asked some military officers from the Air Force to go and visit the Laikipia North Technical Training Institute. And even they were shocked at the, we call them numerical machines. They are computerized lathe machines.
Okay.
You can machine the most precision parts in Laikipia North.
Okay.
At the Technical Training Institute.
Yes.
At Mugwarak, some people call it Poster.
Okay.
That is where we are. That capability actually exists.
Yes.
Now, because most of us don't believe that we can do these things, it is not actually used in the way it is now only used to train the students.
Okay.
But
in production,
it's not being used in production because the belief in ourselves and our capability and what is possible is too low. And in my view, that's actually what is holding us back. Now, I know people say all kinds of things, why it is not possible to transform Kenya. Oh, the institutions are weak. Oh, there's too much corruption.
Yeah.
Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. We are, if you ask me, those are excuses we are creating for ourselves.
Okay.
Because all societies that have transformed also have those problems. People say, oh, okay, look, Singapore, no corruption. Yet, when they talk about that, they will still tell you a minister had to commit suicide when he was found being corrupt. So you can't say there is zero corruption.
Yeah.
It is simply that they have been able to deal with it better. If you look at, say, a country like Costa Rica that has recently transformed to high income,
all right,
they have significant problems on including issues of drugs and so on. So they have significant problems related to corruption and other things.
Yeah.
But they have not let that. They have not put it as the complete barrier that we cannot go beyond here because of. And therefore, my contribution to the debate that is ongoing in Kenya today is that, look, first of all, it's a great thing we're having this debate. Can we transform Kenya or not?
Right.
It's a great thing we're having the debate. I hope everybody agrees such a transformation is desirable. The next step is that if it is desirable, is it possible? Now, it may be that we'll never convince 100% of Kenyans that transformation is possible. I think we just need to convince a critical mass that transformation is possible.
Okay.
Do we have pathways? Yes, including exactly what CT was explaining. Counties are an incredible platform for this transformation because you have everything there. Now, so you may, it is not simply a question of whether you have lots and lots of resources.
Yes.
I don't think so. It's also a question of how well are you utilizing those resources.
Yeah.
Are you being imaginative with those resources?
Yeah.
So to the DG, Daktari.
Yes, Dr. Ali, yes.
Dr. Ali, what I would tell him, well, he and his colleague, again, my friend, His Excellency Governor Khalif,
right.
It is about what they do with that little.
Whatever they have.
That little that they have.
Yes.
For instance, they also know, and I'm involved in it because KRA is involved.
Yes.
We are about to build 2 bridges across the River Dawa.
All right.
One at Suftu, there in Mandera town, to cross, to create a nice highway.
Yes.
And a bridge to facilitate movement into Ethiopia and back. And again, another bridge at Ramu, RHA,
yes. Yes.
About 70 kilometers west of Mandera town.
Okay.
We are involved KRA because we are building there one-stop border posts. So on both places.
For KRA, this is purely customs.
Our role, is so the bridge will be built by Kenha.
Yes.
Ourselves will build the trade facilitation stuff.
Okay.
It's going to happen. we are at contracting stage.
Yes.
The question is, once we build those bridges, what production
Yes.
will
Come from there.
come from Mandera that we will be selling to Ethiopia?
Okay.
So me, I would say it is absolutely possible to transform. The biggest barrier is mindset, and perhaps an equally foundational barrier are political leaders and leaders of different shades
Yes.
who seek to persuade us that it is not possible. I think that's a...
You see, if you look at the county system that we have, you look at other countries that have something similar. We talk of the states that the US has. You ask yourself a simple question. How does a state like California
Yes.
have a GDP that is 1.3 times more than the entire continent of Africa? How does it do that? What do they do?
Tech.
Precisely. You see, that is their niche. That's what they do. But I'm hearing of a 4 trillion GDP. That is a lot of money.
Yes.
It wasn't always the case. Not really. We have similarities with very many countries. We talk of Singapore. It's a very good example. But I like to talk of Iceland. And for a simple reason. Iceland has things that we have in plenty. Power. Geothermal. They have it like this, in droves. We have solar, which they have a problem with, as we have. Okay? Hydro, they have. Now, what they have done with the power that they have, and by the way, when you talk of geothermal, there are few things as renewable as geothermal. The turbines that they have last and last and last. Some of the ones we have in Olkaria, 35 years old, and they're still going strong. 35. The pressure pushes that turbine up, and that pressure, it doesn't actually go away, it comes back again. It's fascinating technology when you think about it. We are 10% capacity. Iceland, 35%. Do you know what they've done with it? Aluminium, one of the toughest metals to smelt. That power and the utilization of it makes the cost of power.
And the chini.
They invite industry. This is their path to what we're referring to as development. It's essentially it's industrialization. So you go to Iceland, you'll be able to do business at a low cost. We have those facilities and more. It's here. It's not something we need to borrow. We have it. Now, so when someone talks to the possibility hits you from every corner you can think of. And these things are nestled. There's a county called Nakuru. Okay? We haven't spoken of other natural resources that we have. We haven't done an audit of our natural resources to determine what their net worth is. Modern technology and science gets you to understand these things very, very easily. What you have as deposits, what you can do with it. So, the conversation is good. But the how, that bit about the how
Is better.
is always short. And thank you so much, Paul. The how is much better because the how may begin as a national conversation, but the how is actually a county conversation.
Okay.
Because the counties are part of the country. It starts with something as simple as own source revenue. That money, that's why I began with California. That's their own source revenue. Hiyo ni pesa yao wameunda.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, precisely. And other things that they do. When our counties get to the point where their own source revenue rivals and surpasses their equitable share, and then we know we are on that path. We are definitely on that path. And it is not something we can't do. This nonsense of own source revenue being pocket money for people who work in the county must stop.
Yeah.
Okay? And those who vote, for heaven's sake, stop voting in people who may have degrees but don't have the capacity to envision what it is. You need people who can envision. They must see this thing. Having an educational qualification doesn't give you that. That one just tells us you can read books, you can pass exams, you can write papers. We get that one. How to put this thing into practice so that there's a plan. When someone asks you, say, this is the plan we have, and this is how we're going to change the lives of our people. And you're specific. This is what we're going to do here, this is where we are starting. When people see the change and they join in hands, this discussion we keep having, that governors keep having, forgive me, keep having
At the COG.
CT, no apology necessary. I absolutely agree with you that
you know, money. We should be talking of how the county governments are giving the national government money.
You know, there was once, Governor Oparanya was our chair.
Right.
And so we were walking in protest. What a spectacle it was.
Yeah.
Walking, I think, towards the High Court, basically haki yetu.
Yeah.
City, no apology necessary. It is, you are spot on. Now, at the risk of offending some of my friends,
Right.
look, and you mentioned Nakuru.
Yes.
The economy of Nakuru, as we speak today, is somewhere in the order of 700-800 billion per year. GDP of any
Okay, 700.
700-800 billion
Okay.
per year. I could even be underestimating.
All right.
Nakuru is home to manufacturing. Nakuru is home to very high-end, very sophisticated agriculture. Flowers, for example, here in the zone in Naivasha and elsewhere, is a very, very large economy. As a matter of fact, it is larger than some micro-states. Yeah. Nakuru by itself.
Yes.
If you take these counties, again, in that region, Paul, they call themselves Central Economic Bloc. But you can also take Lake Basin Economic Bloc.
Okay.
You can take Pwani Economic Bloc.
Yes.
If you take those 10 counties of the Central Economic Bloc, the size of their economy is roughly $28 billion. $28 billion. If they were a country, they are not a country, I'm saying if
they were.
If they were, and you line up the countries of the world, 105 countries of the world
Yes.
have smaller economy than the economy contained by those 10 countries.
So those 100 would be below these guys.
You'll be below those guys. And you'll be shocked who? Mauritius, for example.
Yeah.
Mauritius is actually like $16 billion. Rwanda is $14.5 billion. Rwanda.
Yes.
So they are competing with Nakuru. Botswana
Yes.
is $21-22 billion.
Right.
37 African countries have economies that are smaller in size than the Central Economic Bloc.
37.
Now, 37. So me, I agree with CT when he gets, what's the word, exasperated. That's, Paul, you pronounce it.
Yes.
When you feel a bit frustrated by people.
Right.
What business do my colleagues and I have sitting around complaining instead of leveraging that economy? And that's just the 10 Central Region or Central Economic Bloc. 37 different African countries have smaller economies than them. So even as you complain, about is money late from the treasury or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, it may pay to look at what can we actually ourselves do. What can we do?
And own source revenue wouldn't necessarily be put into the national kitty. Hiyo ni yenu kama county.
Own source revenue is exactly what it is. Own source ni yako.
Hiyo ni yenu.
Ni yenyu.
Yes.
You're not sharing it with the rest of
We are not sharing. Hiyo ni account yako. Now, is it possible? I mean, studies have shown by Commission for Revenue Allocation by different people, including ourselves,
Yes.
players in the private sector, showing that perhaps counties are not even reaching about 30% of their potential. So whatever they are collecting today is around 26-27% of the potential that they can collect. What do they need? There's a little bit of effort, frankly.
Yeah.
But also, there's some misunderstanding. County revenues, most of them are not a tax.
Okay.
In fact, in early February, there is a conference about this exact matter, the own source revenue conference. Early February, around I think 10th, 11th or 12th, to debate these issues, because a lot of county revenue is a fee for service. Okay. Now, when you see, if your own source revenue is low,
yes,
it probably means that your service provision is low. Like what? Take my favorite, livestock movement permit.
Yes.
Now what happens, Paul, is like this.
Yeah.
If you go here to Bisil in Kajiado,
right,
and you buy some goods, or even just here in Kiserian, and you buy some goods, intent on having a party on the weekend.
Yes.
A vet there is supposed to check that the goats you've bought
are healthy,
and that they are good for, and then they give you a yellow kind of looking yes, in order to move the animals. And for that service, you pay like 500 bob.
Okay.
And that is own source revenue, in that case, for the county of Kajiado.
Right.
Now, if the vet is not there providing that service, obviously, they are not going to
get that money,
get the revenue.
Yes.
It is as simple as that.
Okay.
Now, of course, what is the vet actually doing? The vet is playing a very significant public health role, because Paul, you know, animal, you can eat nyama with anthrax.
True.
Yeah. So it is a public health role.
Yeah.
Who is the doer? Who is the professional doing it? Is a veterinary doctor.
Yes.
And they are trained like that, so they're called doctors, so that they can check and certify that, look, this animal is okay for you, it's fit for human consumption, and that they get, they get a little bit of revenue. So one source revenue is a county revenue. It is yours. It is very related with the service provision, because a lot of it is a fee for service, and there's usually a bit of confusion on that. And as a matter of fact, in February we're going to have a conference, a national conference, with many counties involved to debate that issue, because it's a very, very critical issue. But we go back to what is possible. I know it, I have seen it, I have lived it. Just the other day in Laikipia, and you could see young people with their engineering businesses, and that really used to get me excited. And we had been able to put together some little facilities, like 3 billion shillings to us. Not county revenues.
Yes.
Again, it's about, you have to be a bit creative. And us in Laikipia, when we did the 3.3 billion thing, we used about 150 million to leverage 3 billion from the financial sector. How? Yes, Paul.
Yeah, how?
We brought down the risk.
Okay.
Let me speak in layman terms. We went to some large banks of Kenya. You know them. KCB, Equity, Cooperative Bank. So when they said, Mr. Cooperative Bank, fanya hivi, can you lend money to SMEs in Laikipia? So the answer is yes. Now, you assess them. And how much will you charge for your money? I'm going to charge them 13.5%.
Okay.
So he said, okay, you, Cooperative Bank, you, KCB, it is your role to lend. So assess these SMEs. Once you see that you want to lend CT, check with us as county to ensure that CT is a business in Laikipia.
Right.
Where are we looking? We are looking in the single business permit register. Here is some little money to use to buy down the risk, so that instead of CT paying 13.5%, 14% for the money, he will end up paying half of it, which is 7%.
Yes.
And we have put some money in escrow in your bank, so that the other 7%, which we are helping CT to pay, CT and Sons. Yes.
Come down,
It will come down.
So you are actually paying the interest on behalf of CT?
Yes.
Half of it.
Half of it. Now, in the language of finance, we are buying down the credit risk.
Right.
And because of that, we are increasing the chances of CT and SANS being successful. Because now the cost on their cash flow, or the weight on their cash flow, is less. So, is it possible to do that in every county? Of course it's possible to do that in each and every county.
150 million, 3 billion. You
Yeah,
leveraged
you
that.
are leveraged to do that.
And was it successful?
Yes, it was. By the time I was leaving,
Yeah.
we had only had actually one default. And we had thousands of SMEs that
When you're paying
had
7%, and it's per annum, not per week
Yeah, for sure.
or per day,
yeah.
suddenly the cost of that money is very affordable.
Yes.
Extremely affordable.
It is affordable. Now you see the structure and the thinking and bring in people whose business it is to lend money, not you. Counties, that's not your business. But an understanding, every county in this country have people who have the knowledge that His Excellency has.
Yeah.
Every. People who understand economics and understand finance. Wako.
I'm short of calling it genius. I'm
The
this close to calling
the
it genius
in all
because
this is the simplicity of it and how it actually works. Because one of the biggest problems, why do you think government projects like Nyota, Bottom, why do you think they come up?
Hustler.
Because people do not have the means to do the business they want to do or even to start it.
Yeah.
So you provide it. Somebody's already struggling. You can see they're doing it. Some of these banks have similar system. KCB has a beautiful one. Okay? Now, these things exist. There's a perspective I want to share with you even as we get to the end of this, Excellency. It is true, Commission on Revenue Allocation and others have actually examined this, and they've looked at the time of even the local authorities and the revenue collection of all these things, and the 30% mark is true. But the 30% is what is recorded as being collected. It doesn't quite reflect on what is actually collected. It's what you have.
It's what gets to the bank.
That is it. Because, again, a lifestyle audit needs to accompany this so that you examine the lifestyles of people who are involved in that process.
In the whole thing.
Yes, just as a by the way.
Yeah.
Now, if 70% of what you possibly collect doesn't get to the county, if it got to the county, what could the county not do? That's really my point. And then the bigger problem that I noticed was very many counties that had municipalities, when the counties came in, they were collecting less money than the municipalities had been collecting. So you wonder, you have a bigger market and you're collecting less. How?
Yeah.
You see, so there are leakages, and indeed in early February, those are some of the things we shall be talking about.
In that
how do you,
conference,
how do you seal those leakages? But I absolutely agree with UCT that that counties or devolution is a correct platform or one pathway to transformation. Let's compare. Seychelles has about 110,000 people.
Yes.
So, comparable to Lamu County.
Yes.
What is Seychelles? Seychelles, at the moment, is actually the richest per capita in Africa.
Yes, it is.
$21,000 per person
Yes.
per year. What is it based on? Tourism and fisheries.
Full
Only.
stop.
They don't have oil, they don't have
They don't
gas,
have oil.
they don't have gold.
It is high-end tourism and industrial fisheries.
Yeah.
By the way, Seychelles, just the other day in 2008,
Yeah.
when we were having our own problems here, they themselves went bankrupt. They defaulted on loans. Yeah. They defaulted on loans.
Yeah.
So they had to go to the IMF. Sometimes even we do. So the same medicine.
Yeah.
Rebronize your currency. Cut government expenditure. In them, they cut 15%. So they fired 15% of government employees in order to restart the thing. But what is it based on? High-end tourism and
Fisheries.
fisheries.
Mheshimiwa, it's when you mentioned about Seychelles and you said in 2008 they
They went bankrupt.
They went bankrupt, but now you're saying that their GDP is what?
The
Did you
per
say
capita,
21,000?
$21,000 per person per year.
They are the
Yeah.
wealthiest on the continent.
Yeah,
The richest today in Africa.
they're in the ocean, but yeah, on the continent.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, I guess tongue in cheek. But look at the size of their population.
Yes.
It's 110,000. Look at the population of Lamu County.
Similar.
Is about 140.
Yes.
Where is Lamu? Lamu is in
Kenya.
Kenya.
On
It's
the
at
sea.
the coast.
It's in the ocean, just like them.
what is Lamu? Tourism.
Right.
What is Lamu? Fishing. What else is Lamu? Transshipment.
Right.
They have a gigantic port there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be really used for transshipment, a bit, which is actually the story of Singapore. What
Yes.
is Singapore? Transshipment as a logistics hub. So does Lamu have what it takes
Yes.
to do like Seychelles?
Right.
Of course it does. Take another island. Yeah? Mauritius.
Yes.
Mauritius has 1.3 million people. Exactly like Kilifi. Kilifi County.
1.3 million.
Yes,
In fact, Kilifi is more like 1.4, maybe even 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Wako wapi? At the sea. Okay. Now, what is it that Mauritius did? By the way, Mauritius, they just had sugar. By the time when CT was going to primary school, even me had already begun. In the 70s, they had only sugar. Now, they negotiate. In those days, you could negotiate quota. They negotiated a quota. They were given a very high quota by the European Union to sell the sugar because they had nothing and they were that poor. So the Wazungu said, okay, you poor fellows, okay, we give you a quota to sell your sugar and we allow you to sell it at a very high price. Musaidike. Then they had something called the Mauritian Sugar Syndicate. Now, because they were selling sugar at higher than international prevailing international prices, this additional, they called it sugar rent. They used it to build what? EPZ.
Yes.
Exactly like the river EPZs.
Yes.
Because what were they for? They were making textiles, apparel. For which market? America.
You know, you've mentioned Seychelles, you've mentioned Mauritius, and you've compared it to our own cities here, counties, Lamu, and then you also mentioned earlier on Kigali, or rather Rwanda, and you also compared it
to Nakuru.
To Nakuru, and you said Nakuru actually has got more in terms of revenue more than those folks.
The GDP of Nakuru is
massive.
Yes.
So my question is, why is it that we are unable to match up to these places that we feel or think are better than us?
Our limitation is our imagination. Our limitation is our mindset. Our limitation is this I don't know what to call it, but we are enslaved by our thinking. We are enslaved by our I don't want to call it politics, but I don't even think it's by what we do. We get up, we spend most of our time screaming at each other. That's actually how what we call politics in Kenya is basically one group of people throwing mud at the other group of people, and then that's how we spend our day.
We have professors, doctors, and engineers as our governors, and I would think that perhaps because of number one, their training, their careers, and the professionalism perhaps they acquired over the years, they would actually put politics here and then put their professionalism here in terms of delivering for the people that actually elected them. But when I look at countries, the ones that we've mentioned, Mauritius, Seychelles, Rwanda, and I'm asking myself, what is so difficult in terms of achieving these particular successes that these countries have and actually surpassing it? And then I look at the problem that we are calling our politics. I'm thinking then, ni sisi wenyewe tu tumejifungia.
Yeah. In fact, the reason I'm talking about Seychelles and Mauritius is because they have made the transition to high income. Our brothers and sisters in Rwanda are not there yet.
Yes.
Although they have a good reputation. But Mauritius and Seychelles have made the transition to high income. As I said, if you look at Mauritius, they started with sugar. They moved to making clothes, like in the river. Then they figured out, hey, what else can we do? Let's organize our banking sector to make it attractive for people to come and bank here.
Okay.
So in fact, today, quite a number of Kenyan companies, they go to register.
Companies in Mauritius.
In Mauritius, they're operating here, but their headquarter is in Mauritius because the tax, they used tax to attract.
Yeah.
Then they thought, okay, what else can we do? Let's try tourism, like Seychelles.
Yes.
Yeah. Then recently they've said, okay, if we look at what Kenya is doing with ICT, let us do ICT. And that is what has moved Mauritius to basically
High income.
Look, let's look further afield.
Yeah.
Again, smaller states which have the same population as counties. Let's go to Caribbean and find a country, a country
Yes.
called Trinidad and Tobago. Okay? Again, they have like 1.7 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it they did? Their lack was they have natural gas. So they figured out, what can we do with this natural gas? They tried petrochemicals.
Yes.
So they make fertilizers and industrial chemicals. Okay, and of course they have a little bit of tourism. Again, they have made a transition. A bigger country,
Yes.
one of my favorites, is
Yes.
Costa Rica.
Right.
Costa Rica, and when we were in secondary school, Costa Rica was just bananas and coffee. Nothing else. Then they thought, okay, what can we do with ourselves? And they started, guess what? Special economic zones. For what? Mainly American ICT companies. And that's what does. So, is it possible? Of course it is possible, Paul.
Yeah.
The limitation is our own imagination and belief in ourselves. I want to give you an antidote from my history. When I got home from uni, because I'd gone to university in Canada.
Yes.
In those days, of course, going overseas was such a
Big deal.
my friend here should tell you, people would come with matatus to take us to the airport. It was such a big deal.
Yeah.
So
You are representing the entire community.
yes.
So they must escort you.
Wewe ndio yani sasa you're their hope.
When people talk about their sons who are abroad, ni wewe.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you're the one who's abroad, not even your son.
So I've come back. There is tea at home.
Yeah.
I'm from a place called Chamonix.
All right.
Now, there was a man there who used to work for my mom called Mr. Mwangi.
Okay.
He was a farmhand. Okay? So, when I'm back and neighbors, friends have come, it's a celebratory mood, people are talking. And Mr. Mwangi overheard people saying how I was number one
Okay.
in class.
Right.
So afterwards, when we went to tend to the cows, he asked me, he pulled me aside. He said, is it true what people are saying? I said, what? He said that you defeated Wazungus in school. Is it really true? I said, yes, why? How? Is it really possible to defeat Wazungus? So,
Mindset.
And Mr. Mwangi could know, how is it possible?
Unashindaje mzungu?
Umeenda kwao ukawashinda kwa shule. How? Look. So, it is our imagination that is limiting us.
Okay.
It is this craving we have for negativity. Now, it's not that we should sweep problems under the carpet, but I don't think all we should do is focus on problems. We should focus, first of all, we should have self-belief.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw one of the columnists recently wrote over Christmas season about mindset. And was saying how what we need is like a national mental set or mindset for success. Why are we so obsessed with pulling each other down and debating endlessly why it is not possible?
Instead of why is it possible?
Instead of why is it possible and how is it possible? Where can we look? Let's look at those who have done it. If you ask me my favorites, I've told you. Seychelles, Mauritius, Botswana to some extent, Costa Rica, Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
They have all done it. It is possible to do it. But the one thing I'm happy about is that at least we're having the debate.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it becomes a bigger debate. It shapes the way we are thinking as Kenyans, particularly those who are in political leadership or who are aspiring to political leadership. And I remain convinced it is possible.
Okay.
Again, one other piece of data,
Sure.
Paul. We are in 2026.
6.
Now, when you talk about a generation, what is a generation? Is anywhere between 20 and 30. Because I think a generation is how long it takes for somebody to be born and then for them to now start also having children.
Right.
So let's say, 20 to 30 years, if we call that a generation.
Yes.
So in this generation, we have moved from $390 per person to $2,600 per person. Calculate what is that? What is the magnitude of that change? What is the magnitude? So per capita income in Kenya has increased 7 times in the course of this generation. So we are counting from 2003.
Yes.
So in 23 years, actually practically 22 because we are just in the beginning
of 2026.
In 22 years, we have moved from $390 per person
to
$2,600 per person. Now, I'm not here on your radio claiming that every Kenyan is rich. I'm not here saying that there is equality in Kenya. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying, look at the number and ask yourself what it really means.
Okay.
That's the distance this society has traveled. 7 times. 7
times.
Did we have problems during the last 22 years? Of course, we had gigantic problems.
Yes, we did.
Including near civil war in January of 08. But we have moved 7 times. So assume we continue to namna hiyo. The kids in Shamanei, they say fogodhari. I don't even know what it means, but it means like confused. Madhogodhanio, exactly.
Yes.
So even assume we continue with our madhogodhanio as we are today.
Yes.
And we increase again by 7 times. If you take 2,600 times 7, what do you get on your arithmetic?
2,600 times 7?
Yes.
Something close, if not more than 16,000 thereabout.
Yes. So,
yeah,
even with that madhogodhanio that we are doing, in another 20 years, we will certainly be
higher
income.
It's actually 18,200.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm saying, let us just use history then, recent history. Between the year 2003 and the year 2025, Kenya per capita income has increased 7 times. If we stay on that trajectory, again in another 20 years, perhaps even fewer because, there is a rule of compounding.
Yes.
We can go to high income. Now, can we do it sooner? The answer is yes. What can we do to get there sooner? I start with CT's favorite, counties as centers of growth. Can our county governments embrace economic transformation and be the drivers of economic transformation? I am very hopeful. I saw the other day Governor Anyang' Anyong'o, one of my favorite governors in the Republic, in fact, go and have a sit down with the president to say, here is my thoughts on paper, how we are going to transform this Kenya.
Right.
Another favorite of mine is Governor Kang'ata here in Murang'a. So you can see already pockets, counties that are doing certain progressive things that give you reason to hope. So counties as a source of growth.
Yes.
If Seychelles and Mauritius have done it on tourism, what's to stop us from doing it on tourism? Yeah, we can, improve tourism.
Yes.
If Costa Rica has done it on ICT,
Yeah, surely.
What
is stopping us?
Like, for example, one of my frustrations, I tell you, is the national optic fiber backbone. I want to tell you, Paul, and I know many young people don't believe it, but every major town in Kenya,
iko na fiber
today. That fiber, I don't even think is used 10%. So even if you don't like government, but at least use the fiber because it is there. Another completely underutilized asset is this lab set. Okay? It is there. Is it fully developed? No, but it is there, not being used. So if you ask me, what is our pathway? I would say counties as a platform. I would say leveraging tourism. I would say ICT, because we already are an African leader in ICT, and we can do better. Then some interesting things have happened. Steel, the steel sector.
Yes.
Albeit, again, higo, you know, that
Madogodanio. Yes.
But we now have a reasonable steel sector with as many as maybe 12 or more steel mills.
Yeah, there are many. There are many. When you drive along Mombasa Road, you will see so many.
So many.
Yeah.
And cement.
Yeah.
Now, why is steel important? Steel is often the basis of heavy manufacturing.
Okay.
So the fact that we are there, and for the first time, we are making steel from iron ore.
Yes.
Okay.
Which we have in plenty.
So it gives you, again, reason to hope. A quick story about the numerical machining complex.
Yes.
If you go there, what you will find, there's a smelting. You have to smelt the metal. And
smelting component to it.
Yes, and then you have to cast it. So you'll see the smelting. You can smelt like, I think 5 tons per hour, but you can cast 15 tons. The reason that smelting is kidogo is because at that time in 1990, when you put it on, the lights would dim in Nairobi because of the
energy consumption.
Energy consumption of the thing. But now, so the kind of useful debates, Paul, we should be having is what is the power requirement of the transformed economy.
Speaking of which,
what is the engineering? I mean, how many engineers? Does a transformed economy require? Yeah, okay. And we've had these debates before. So when you hear government talking about trying to get ultimately to 15,000 megawatts, it is because of that is our best guesstimate at the moment of the amount of power required. So where are we? We are not there yet. We are at around 4,000.
Yes.
Nonetheless, we are in that.
We're in the
trajectory. How many engineers do we need? Karanja Kefisho and I, we used to estimate this. It was our job to estimate when we were younger and we were in the Ministry of Industrialization.
Yes.
To estimate how many engineers do we need. The figure escapes me, but I think we had guesstimated something like either 40,000. We had a number.
40,000 engineers.
Yes. In the whole economy.
Yeah.
And so when you saw government expanding university education and expanding the Technical Training Institute, it was in response to some actual thinking that we were doing. So, even with that Madogodanio,
right,
we are on the trajectory of transformation. Imagine what will happen, Paul, if we style up just kidogo too.
In terms of manufacturing, because that has been one of my passions. In terms of our capacity to be a manufacturing hub, where would you put us in terms of percentages?
Firstly, let me explain just a couple of quick points related to manufacturing.
Sure.
The first one is that the proportion or the proportionate contribution of manufacturing to GDP has declined. That is true. But it in part has declined because other sectors, particularly ICT, have emerged. It is true some kind of manufacturing, particularly of fast-moving consumer goods,
Yes.
like toothpaste and things like that. Some of the companies who used to manufacture here have started importing from other units, particularly within COMESA.
All right.
That is to be expected when you think about it as an economist, that once we did the free trade arrangements of COMESA, of EAC, and now Continental Free Trade Area, but the effect actually came from COMESA, some of the manufacturing was going to go to where they can create efficiencies. So some fast-moving consumer goods, it is true, some of the companies preferred to then bring stuff from their
Neighbors.
particularly from Egypt. That's true. What people don't talk about is the other kind of manufacturing that has emerged in Kenya. So, in the last 15 years,
Yes.
cement factories have increased by, I think, at least a dozen. Steel factories by a similar magnitude.
Figure, yeah.
So, although some fast-moving consumer goods manufacturing is not here anymore, steel and cement, which, if you think about heavy industry,
Yes.
is what you need, have emerged. What I see as an immediate opportunity for Kenya in manufacturing is now that we are making steel, to use the steel, particularly if these factories are able to make high-speed steel. High-speed steel is, the steel you need
Yes.
to make a machine.
Yes.
When you think about something that is turning like this, it requires to be a certain kind of steel so that it doesn't bend. Yeah. You see, even things like this is
Even like this console.
yeah, it has steel in it,
Right.
but this is easy to bend, so you can't use it to make a gear, for example.
All right.
The gear will bend.
All right.
Now, making high-speed steel is our next step. Yeah. With high-speed steel, it means we can now make cars and pumps and agricultural machines and so on.
Right.
That's the natural trajectory I see for Kenya, and we should be able to make machines not just for our own agriculture,
But
but
for
even
export.
for export.
So this is not at the assembling. No, this is
making
from scratch.
From scratch.
I know the president has been talking about our need for more power, more energy. So that means we increase, the amount of electricity we are producing. But is that the only thing that could stop us from expanding our manufacturing capacity?
It's a very serious limitation. Nonetheless, as City has explained,
Right.
if we exploit our geothermal fully, and we are nowhere near, if we exploit our geothermal fully, we, in the interim, we are importing from Ethiopia, and that's what we should do. But utilize geothermal fully.
Yes.
Move to the kind of manufacturing we are talking about. Kenya, of course, because we have some, things like titanium and this is even layer arts. People say we have, so there is manufacturing for a high end, like electronics. I think we should be able to get in that kind of manufacturing.
Okay.
So what is required? We certainly need to increase the power capacity we have. It is usually an iterative process, because if you create 10,000 megawatts today, somebody has to pay for it.
Yes.
So who will pay if the demand is not there? So there is an iterative process. My view is we take advantage of the fact that we can import. That is growing demand, even as we are building on our own capacity, particularly geothermal. Again, solar, we have plenty of. In terms of the resource itself, one would like to see more and more solar power plants coming in.
Yeah.
Wind, we have plenty of. So, manufacturing remains a very, very interesting opportunity for Kenya.
Yeah.
What kind of manufacturing? Heavier manufacturing, not just fast-moving consumer goods, which was where we started. in the 70s into 80s, we were in the region.
Yes.
We were the ones doing it.
But now you told us that business has...
No, once we went to COMESA,
yes.
you see, Egypt has certain
advantages over us,
but proximity, I think, to the Mediterranean.
Okay.
Also the cost of power, and they've been able to whatever, and they have used it very, very effectively.
Okay. Because I also had this idea that we could do pharmaceutical manufacturing.
We could, yes.
And I feel like our capacity is, because of, number one, the resources we have in terms of our herbs and the trees and all these other resources that we need, the water. I feel like our pharmaceutical manufacturing could be at, I don't know where to place it, but I think we can do way better than some of...
We certainly can.
You're actually very right, Paul, because you see, for instance, the Kenya Medical Research Institute has a production unit. Now you'll ask what? It can produce vaccines.
Yes.
It can produce certain products that are actually needed in the field of research and healthcare. But it's a small production unit. Expertise is something you plan for and you create. You start off with skills. You create the skills and you have the know-how and the ability and the infrastructure to upgrade those skills.
Yes.
These European countries you're talking of Germany, you're talking of Switzerland.
Yes.
Oh, those are TVET countries. They have academic institutions, yes, and old ones, but they're TVET countries. People who have technical skills are infinitely more valued than people who have paper qualifications like myself. And that is how they have built the country that they have. Believe me, it's a huge sector. Now, we can't delve too much into our past and our history because it's a trajectory we were on. And we have the infamy of being a country that as we move forward, there are many instances where we've moved very many steps backwards. We were already ahead, and it was just a question of pushing it ahead, and then we
tunapiga about time.
And we regress, and then we start again, and we're thinking, but
then we complain.
We were there already. Why did you have to go back?
Yeah.
But the fact that it has been done is all the evidence that we need. That all you have to do is have that deliberateness to want to do these things. You know, this isn't magic. No, it isn't magic.
Paul, can I mean, okay, I hope it wouldn't sound like
unajigonga kifua.
No,
By all means, do it.
You need to talk about things you know and you've done.
Thank you.
Yes.
You see, the power of an idea, Paul. A few years ago, in my own hood of Laikipia, I started talking about feedlots. When I started talking about feedlots, many of the guys would actually just laugh at me. Like, what are you talking about? We even tried to promote some pilots. Yeah, I wouldn't mention the community, but in one particular community ranch, we begged, borrowed some. I can't remember which donor gave us some little money. We went and planted, hay. We went and planted grass.
Right.
Because I would be explaining to my colleague pastoralists that, look, as pastoralists, we move looking for grass. And I was telling them, no, the animal should stay here. It is the grass that should come to the animal. Now, today, I mean, are we succeeded fully? No. But if you go to Muriithi, you'll find there a feedlot with a capacity of 5,000 animals. I'm not sure how many there are now, but certainly last time I was there are something like 3,000 head of cattle in Muriithi.
Yes.
I can count, including myself, another 17 smaller feedlots. The power of an idea. Now, it is no longer just an idea. People, you go on TikTok, you go on Facebook, you see people displaying and showing their feedlots all over the place, from in Kilifi, in Kajiado here, and certainly in Laikipia. I am telling you the power of an idea.
Yeah.
Another thing that the power of an idea, and people laughed at us when we're talking about the BJ50, the tuk-tuk.
Yes.
Now, what people don't see is what happened after. Now, the tuk-tuk is still struggling along, but some other guys doing grain dryers have grown up the business. They were in the same group of engineering SMEs that we were assisting.
Yes.
Now they export to Togo, I don't know to where, stuff. Great dryers. They even have figured out how to make small ones that you pack and go with it.
It's a portable dryer.
It's a portable grain dryer.
Right.
So, power of an idea.
Yes.
And I want to tell you, I agree with CT that what we should be asking governors today, you, Governor Ndiritu, in your county, how many technical training institutes are there? How are you utilizing them?
Okay.
Yeah? How are you utilizing them?
Yeah.
We had a crisis here, global, called COVID.
Okay.
And we had to make emergency type hospitals. So simple things like, say, beds. Where are we going to get beds? We just stand to the VTCs. Yeah?
Yeah.
And in Laikipia, we have, at that time we had 14 vocational training institutes. We said, make beds for us. Within 2-3 weeks. Over 1,000 beds. Yeah. In Laikipia.
Yes.
Yeah. What, in my view, we are lacking, we understand. Somewhat.
Yes,
we somewhat understand, but we have zero conviction. In fact, again, if you look at the way this Singapore debate is going, is that anybody who says Singapore is possible, wacha tu? Tumlime. Yes. Anybody who tries to say it's possible for us to transform, wacha tu? Twange. I mean, I don't understand that mindset.
Someone once said that actually they sat in that chair that you've sat. They said the Singapore conversation is a good one. It's just that it was started by the wrong person. Of course, they meant that it is because it is President Ruto who started it. Yes. Had it been said by, I don't know, Siti Muga or Kalonzo Musyoka, perhaps it would have been taken differently. And I tend to agree with that particular gentleman because we need to be objective about that conversation so that we can see what is where. But of course, our politics get in between.
Actually, no, Paul. Our politics, even as it is, because it is what it is, I am not even concerned about changing it.
Yeah.
It is the vehicle, the same vehicle you use to propagate these things. An idea comes about and someone opposes it. You open a debate.
Yeah.
Now that debate is now what gets people to understand what is possible and what isn't.
It's not possible.
It's important.
Yeah.
You know why? When you have the politics we have, it encourages people to have what you call magic thinking.
Yes.
I'm going to give you an example. I was at Kisumu Airport on Saturday morning. I had gone to bed a friend of mine, former classmate of mine. And I was another colleague. We were representing the group. And the group of young men sitting in a corner. And the guy asked me, what are those young men doing? I said, they're waiting for politicians. So they're doing what? Yes, they're waiting for politicians. Why? I said, they provide a service called security. Said, you're not serious. I told him, I'm extremely serious. I told him, you know, I worked in this region for over 17 years.
Yes.
There are things I know, so I'm telling you. I knew people who are now older, who are much younger, who used to do these things. So it's something I understand. Said, what else do they do? I said, some of them are manumbers, as we call them. They work in the bus park. Beyond that, nothing else. Said, but they're young. I said, yes, they are young. I said, look, you can categorize what you're seeing there as the power of a narrative. You can look at it as a power of example because there are people who are older than them who they saw doing this. Because these are young. At my age, I'd call them kids. Okay? Now, what am I saying? The power of example should never be underestimated. All you require is to see somebody you associate and relate to doing something. Kisumu town was a place where your property could get burnt like this. Your vehicle could get burnt like this. All that was required was a little noise and chaos would drain almost immediately. One no longer sees that. Doesn't happen. And you have to ask why. You have to get people to understand and to have a healthy relationship with material things. Meaning, if I know a friend of mine who has a piki or a tuk-tuk or a vehicle, I'll be reluctant to try and harm that person because I can relate to this asset. If I can't relate to it, I really couldn't care whether it exists or not. Now, that is what happens when the livelihood or the economic welfare of people changes. And the power of example in people they can relate to. But it starts by meeting them at the point of need. Forget some crazy esoteric ideas that you may have.
Yeah.
They're already doing it. How do they enhance that thing that they're doing? Because that they can relate to. And you can. But it requires something most of us are not willing to do, thinking. Because the thinking is what gets you to look for people who understand how to move to the next stage, the next level, and engage them. Now, I don't blame politicians for any of these things for a simple reason. Politicians are doing what they need to do what they plan to do, even now. But we elect them, and from among us, there are things that a politician, no matter how well-meaning he is, cannot do. So these very same people are the ones who have to set themselves up to do it. Okay? But again, it comes down to the thinking. If you look at why it is this issue of that I hear you mention to me every so often about these opinion shapers you call influencers. It's a growth industry because there's a demand for what they do.
Yes.
Okay? It's a time in which we live in, and I'm told people even make money from it. Okay? How many things do we do that people make money from, and which at their current position can actually be given a certain kick up the road, a certain notch higher, and so that it actually becomes something that beyond you doing it can actually engage the people. It's called employment. How? But it requires the thinking.
You see, this whole thinking thing, actually there's a question here in regards to thinking, and this one I'll direct it to Mheshimiwa. Leleya Okay, naona kuna jina Brian hapo katikati.
Just go with Brian.
Let me go with Brian. How do we develop a positive mindset amongst the citizens as key element for change? How do we, and for me, I will take it amongst the citizens, I'll take it and just say, how do we ensure that Kenya can have that mindset such that it doesn't matter whether I'm Kikuyu, Kamba, Kijaluo or Swahili, we have the mindset that will take us into that development agenda?
Well, I'm not sure that it is only one way. But certainly, think about the conversations you are having today. Radio generation. Think about the conversations you're having.
Yes.
These are very serious conversations. And they influence the way we are thinking.
Yes, they do.
So the more people are having these sort of serious, open-minded conversations about ourselves, about our country, the more likely that we will move in the trajectory Brian is asking. The other one is what CT has said, the power of demonstration. Now, again, let's talk about Kisumu. I love Kisumu because it's now, if you look at what Kisumu is doing, the county government of Kisumu.
Yes.
Very interesting things. Like, take the idea of Kisumu being a smart city. And they worked at it, found partners globally, the Global Smart City Alliance is now like headquartered almost in Kisumu.
Yeah.
That has led them to start hosting continental conferences on how cities should look like. Yeah. That has led them to start the Lakefront Development Corporation. So if you go to the Lakefront Development Corporation, you will find now they are redesigning, reimagining Kisumu. That how can Kisumu face the lake instead of facing away from the lake?
Okay.
Now they're talking about the frontage, the lake frontage, and what kind of infrastructure and what kind of activity can happen there. Suddenly, even the roads people are also now talking about how can we redesign the ring roads and around Kisumu city.
Yes.
So the power of demonstration.
Yes.
As many other counties do the same. Yeah. Again, up country here, we started the idea of smart towns. Our pals, our friend in Muranga, picked it up. Now, most counties in the neighborhood have picked up on the idea that, look, every small town is better to clean it up a little bit. Pave the roads, make it easy for people to walk, put street lights and lights so that business can work in the evening. Demonstration. So the more we are doing these things, the more we are having this conversation, the more it becomes possible.
Yes.
And really we must thank folks like yourself and CT and others who don't shy away from having the right conversation and are not carried away with the daily hubris sometimes that politics can create, which is in my view a drawback.
Yeah. And I like what you've said, that there is not one way.
It's not one way. Yes.
Several ways that will get us there.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Kilifi, for example, if you look at the special economic zones that are coming up in Kilifi, including by private developers,
investors,
again, we have very serious reason to hope and to expect change in that region.
Vipingo, once upon a time, a Sisal estate, is in Kilifi County. What's happening there is fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating in that it is a development that once it was imagined and the idea was bought into, that one development suddenly gives that county a completely different face. Because the sort of people it brings in, the sort of people who want to buy, live, because people are buying to live, not buying so that they can visit. There are those who buy to visit. It's not in leaps and bounds that we grow.
Yes.
It's more or less a step by step. Then the economists, something referred to as a takeoff stage. That's with reference to an economy. There's a point at which when you reach, things now just start propelling themselves, they move, because you've actually aggrandized and brought together a critical force that now more or less helps push and propel this thing forward. But literally almost every county in this nation has the capacity to look at itself and realize this is what we can actually do that will help bring about that change.
Paul,
yes.
You said Dr. Ali was here.
Yes.
They have a project in Mandera town. Not really, I wouldn't call it a project, a program. They grow trees. Okay? It's not what you would associate, but Mandera government figured out how do we get green, how do we green Mandera town?
So it's a reforestation program.
The trees may not even have been there in the first place. But what they did is that they have a program where they pay citizens not just to plant, but to look after it. So you plant it, you water it, you look after it, and you get a stipend at the end of the month.
That's a good idea.
Now, who are the doers? Women. So suddenly, women have income. Last year, Mandera won a global award for greening it.
It's town.
That's actually great, yeah.
So I went there to see it. While there, I was shocked at the fruits that Mandera grows. Now, what many people don't realize, although it's in a dry area, but there's a gigantic river there called River Dawa, which is the boundary between Kenya and Ethiopia. So suddenly, I certainly became aware of things like the River Dawa, River Dawa Basin Development Project, which Kenya and Ethiopia are discussing. So, well, on the one hand, you remember how young people are mocking the president when he was talking about the road.
Yes.
By the way, that road is being built.
the one that became a meme.
The one that became a meme.
Kutoka Lamu, Tulo.
That road actually is being built. And has been for some time. I would expect in the next couple of years, all of it, from Isiolo to those two bridges I spoke about
Yes.
to be actually complete.
Okay.
Because except one segment where a contractor is having difficulties, all the other segments are under development. And like the bridges, we are about to go to tender for the bridges. So, ideas. But Brian is asking, how do we create positivity? It's not one way. I think it's several ways. The conversations, but also demonstration that these things are possible.
You know, the examples we were talking about earlier on of other countries that are part of Africa, they are islands. You see, the power of example is in understanding what it is that they were and what they have become and what they have done to become what they are. Imagine Mandera County. Mandera is huge.
Yes.
Imagine Mandera County being imagined as the breadbasket of Kenya. Start off with something as simple as the rainfall. People think in those areas there's no rainfall. There is rainfall.
Yes.
Even roads flood. So what do you do with the water? What is the program you have for harvesting? Because there's plenty of water. How do you store this water? How do you harvest it? These aren't alien ideas. These are ideas that are practical and almost anyone can apply.
By the way, Siti, the data, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data shows Marsabit is the fastest growing county in Kenya. Growing at like 8-9%.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's very huge.
Marsabit. Now, again, I'll go back to this utilization of LAPSET. If Mandera is not Mandera, Marsabit, so Moyale hapo boundary kwenda Ethiopia, that county is growing at around 8%. Its economy. Now, imagine what will happen as Ethiopia begins to use Lamu or LAPSET more and more. Yeah. So the signs are there.
Yes.
Well, let's just keep having the conversation.
Yes, definitely. Before I let you go, we have about 2 minutes. We are seeing a lot of drama as far as broad-based government is concerned because of what is happening in ODM. Do you think that is going to affect the delivery? Because we were told ODM donated some folks so that we can ensure that this dream of, I think Baba used to call it Canaan, now it's Singapore. Are we going to get to this destination?
The two are in the same geographical area.
Yes. Baba started by Canaan a couple of years ago.
Look, the economic transformation, we can call it by whatever name. I mean, we have called it Vision 2030.
Yes.
We've called it Canaan.
Yeah.
We've called it Singapore. Certainly for me, it means high income, meaning $14,000 per person per year and above.
Yes.
Now, the drama going on, I guess it was to be expected. You know, power abhors. Is that English?
Yes.
Abhors a vacuum.
A vacuum.
Yes.
Right.
So, with the passing on of Mzee,
Yes.
I mean, obviously, left gigantic shoes to be filled. And I guess many people will be trying to fill those shoes. So I think that it was almost inevitable that there will be a bit of jockeying within the political formation, political organization called ODM. I mean, I hope they find their feet. It would be sad if such a formidable political
outfit
were to fall into disarray. But it is for them. It is for the leaders in that organization to find themselves and organize themselves. Will it affect delivery? I don't think so. You know, I wasn't in ODM, but the reason, or rather I became chairman of KRA, courtesy of that broad-based. And we are proceeding on with our work unimpeded.
Yes.
And I expect that we will continue to do so. And I should perhaps use the opportunity to just say one point, if you allow me.
Sure.
I mean, and to thank Kenyans. You know, in December, we had very good progress. We exceeded our monthly target by 21.9 billion in December. So that gave us quite a bit of hope.
Yeah.
So in terms of a monthly whatever, we were well over 100%. We were maybe like 110% of performance. The first week of January also quite good outcomes.
Yes.
So thank you to Kenyans for trusting us to do this job. Of course, as an organization, we are going through tremendous change, renewing ourselves. Everything from the very top to the graduate trainees who are entering the organization.
Yes.
Just last year, we wanted to get 200. I mean, and thank you again to young Kenyans. The 35,000 applied. It took us quite a bit of time to just to sift through. But thank you, and such talented young Kenyans. But all the way up to commissioners. The board, we've been at it for several months now.
Yes.
Hiring commissioners, some internal, some external. They in turn, hiring deputy commissioners, some internal, some external. They in turn looking at chief managers, and it goes like that.
Yes.
We're also quite looking at technology.
Okay.
And to make, to simplify and bring down costs for our clients. So, we are quite, what's the word I'm looking for? We are feeling very optimistic about the trajectory we are on.
Okay. I will invite you back. I don't know when you will be free, but there's something we will need to touch on, the blue economy, which is, I think, we rarely have that conversation, to be honest. And I think that one needs to be highlighted quite well. And the other segment, or the other part we need to talk about is our agriculture, which when I was growing up, primary, I was being told that agriculture and tourism are the backbone of this country.
Yes.
So that one, I think...
today we should say ICT.
Yeah, and of course the ICT
is a backbone.
Where we lost the plot as far as agriculture is concerned.
We didn't lose the plot.
We lost it.
No, we didn't.
We did.
But that's why we'll come and talk about it.
Exactly.
Let's come and debate. One thing I would myself like to throw in there.
Yes.
Think about what is happening with mobile, mobile money, and all things mobile.
Yes.
I'm told one mobile money provider says they are moving 4.2 trillion per month, not per year.
Yes.
Per
month. That is their turnover.
That's how much money is moving on their platform. So cumulatively, you're talking about a little over 50 trillion
yearly.
Tuko
na doi Kenya.
Precisely the point.
So hiyo pesa Paul nikuulize tunafanyaje naye? Because you can say unanitumia tunatumia madhe nini, lakini tunafanyaje na hiyo do? There must be something we are doing with it. Yeah? Meaning there is some production happening somewhere.
Yes.
And that's why I honestly think we have every reason to believe in ourselves as Kenyans.
Yes.
Believe in ourselves, in our capacity to do great things.
All right. Thank you so much. Umesikia venye governor amesema tumia madhe do. Unajua madhe nani?
Paul.
Okay, so coming up next, Rania Abdi and Lady Mathai on the Retro Box. Wacha nitoke mpaka kabla nichapo na city.